the first tools that Transparency International actually developed was something called the Corruption Perceptions Index. And the Corruption Perceptions Index is, as it's described, is a perception of conducted or acquired through a range of surveys as to how business people in particular perceive a country's level of corruption. Now, when this first started in the 1990s, it was rather rudimentary. The base of it, though, was that there had to be at least 3 surveys conducted by Transparency International relevant to a particular country that were robust surveys, and that then could actually be used to measure the level of perceptions of corruption. Through that Corruption Perception Index, they started to actually release on an annual basis a revised version. As time has gone on, that particular perception or that index has become more sophisticated, and the methods used to actually measure corruption has become more sophisticated. However, it's still very much determined on a perception basis, and that's primarily because, as you can probably imagine, corruption is not always something that's done publicly. People don't tend to post how much money they've acquired or through corrupt processes, and people don't actually divulge whether or not they've actually engaged in corrupt conduct. So inevitably, it relies on people being involved in businesses in particular countries saying, well, this is the experience that we've had, this is who's required a payment of money or a percentage of a particular contract, this is how high up it goes, which then determines the level of corruption that's actually perceived to be in that country. On the flip side, there's also another index called the Bribe Payers Index. This doesn't come out quite so frequently. It's not annual. It tends to be every 3 years at the moment. And in this case, government officials are actually asked to identify the nationals of which countries are likely to be most likely to offer bribes to government officials. And there's only about 26 countries because clearly they focus on those countries that have the most trade at this stage. So in a sense, that's where I suppose the Corruption Perceptions Index is at, and the Bribe Payers Index as well. The Corruption Perceptions Index, however, has become very important to a lot of the private sector who are seeking to actually invest in developing countries, and they'll use that as part of their risk analysis before they decide whether or not to actually invest in a country. And I think overall it also has a flow-on effect too into aid, because then government officials in the donor countries look at that to determine how much checks and balances you need to put on to ensure that aid monies are spent appropriately.